Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. When I was doing my How to Play series on Global War 1936 to 1945, I kind of skipped the Spanish Civil War. I thought what I would do is just get the expansion set and just show you that one. But that's not so good. In fact, I had a question just in the last couple days about the Spanish Civil War, and could I do a video on that? And I probably should. So I'm going to make this video and add it to the playlist of How to Play Global War 1936 to 1945. And then at some point in the near future, I will also do a video on the Spanish Civil War as a expansion set. But you should know the out-of-box rules for this, and so I'm going to go over them. So the first thing you need to know is that you have to be using the 1936 scenario. If you're using the 1939 scenario, then there's only Spanish nationalists on the board. And what you're looking at here is Spain. So I put the roundels on the board here to make it easier to see, because as you look at it here, the roundels are not very easy to see as for the nationalists. And so they have these two territories here, and also they have this colony down here, Spanish Morocco, and over here they have the Balearic Islands, and they have a couple ships down in here. There's a cruiser and a transport. But on the mainland there's only two territories that they have, right? And this is really where it's fought, is on the mainland. Like, you could use these guys that are out in the colonies, but all you need to do to win the Spanish Civil War is to capture the mainland here. And that does not include Gibraltar or Portugal. Those are separate countries there. So who they are, first of all, you have the Republicans, and they were communists. They were supported by the Russians. And so the Russian player will control the Republican Spanish. And then you have the nationalists, and they were fascists. So that's the yellow guys here. And they're going to be controlled by the German player. So when it's Germany's turn, then Germany will control them. But they will control them separately. Like, they're not going to combine attacks or anything. Germany and Russia can't actually attack anybody in here. They have to stay out of the Spanish Civil War. What they do is they lend lease to them. So you can't give them a unit that you have. Like, you couldn't fly down one of the German planes and give it to them. But what you would do is purchase a plane, and then on the place units phase, where you would do the lend lease, then you would lend lease the plane to them. And of course it has to go through the normal lend lease routes, right? Like, that's either it goes by railroad and from naval base to naval base when it goes over water. So the nationalists would be getting theirs through the naval base here, because there's no naval base here. So they would all the nationalist Spanish units would be coming in here, unless they took one of these territories out, of course. And then the Republicans, there's a naval base here, a naval base here, a naval base here. The Republicans really do start in a better position. The one thing that the nationalists have going for them is that Germany is more powerful than Russia in 1936. And so if Germany decides to put the effort in and to make the investment, then they can kind of even up the odds a bit. But as you can see, even the forces here are outnumbering them. You'll want to bring these two guys down here, like you have a transport here. So you'll want to bring these two guys, if you're the German player, and bring them up to here for sure as soon as you can, because there's also these Republican boats over here. So these Republican boats can attack these guys, and then there's two units that you're not going to get onto the mainland. So first turn, you're going to want to get those two units from Spanish Morocco up to what is that called there, Leon Castle. Anyway, so it begins in 1936 and it ends when one side is victorious. And like I said, to be victorious, for the nationalists you have to take over these four territories, and for the Republicans you have to take over these two territories. Basically, you have to own all 6 territories there, and no forces up there. It doesn't matter if there's still guys down here, if there's a guy over here. Those guys don't matter. Those are just colonies. What you need to do is take over mainland Spain, and then you win the Civil War. So production. Now, neither side collects money, even though there's a couple of dollars here. Like there's $1 here, and I believe the other dollar is right here. Yeah. So Spain is actually worth $2, but it doesn't matter. You don't collect the money. What you do instead is, so it's Germany's turn, and they do their turn, and they do the nationalist Spanish turn, and then they count up the number of territories that they have. In mainland Spain, so it doesn't. These ones don't count. So in this case, they have 2 territories. So you would roll a die, and it has to be equal to or less than the number of territories that you have. So in this case, they would have to roll a 2, right? So let's just move the camera back here. So they'd have to roll a 2, and that's an 8. So nothing happens, right? But and then when the Republicans go. Well, the Russian player goes and takes their turn, and then they do whatever they want to do for the Republicans. And then it comes to their turn, and there's 4 territories there. So they'll roll the dice. They need a 4 or less, so they missed. But what would happen if either side had made their roll? And obviously, it's in your best interest to have as many territories as possible, because it's easier to get your roll on a higher number or less, right? So you would either get, if you make your roll, you either get 1 infantry or 2 militia. And that's the only way you can get production, is through the Lend-Lease from those 2 nations, Germany and Russia, or from rolling the die and getting your number or less, and then placing an infantry or 2 militia. So that's the only way to put units into Spain there. And if you're playing the other one, the expansion set, then there's more to it than that. But as far as the out of box, we call this out of box when you're just playing by the normal rules. As far as the out of box goes, that's the only way to put things on there. So what happens if the Germans and the Soviets go to war while this civil war is going on? Then each side immediately aligns their controlled Spanish forces. So in other words, you take these yellow guys off and you replace them with German guys. And you take these guys off and you replace them with Russian guys. That's what happens when Soviets and Germany go to war. Unless, of course, one side has already won. If one side has already won, then that doesn't happen. Okay, we already talked about victory. Okay, so what happens if one side wins? So if the Axis win, that gives them 1 IPP bonus per turn for Germany and Italy. So you would put the German income and the Italian income up by 1 if the Spanish win the Civil War. And Germany does have a chance to align Spain later. You know what? Let me just check on that. I think I know what it is, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm just going to look at the rules and see how you align, and I'll be right back. Yeah, so I thought I knew what the answer was, and I did. So if the nationalists win the Civil War, then Germany can align them either by capturing London, so up there, taking out London. Then Spain will all of a sudden align, and all the Spanish troops will become German. Or if if the Axis managed to capture Gibraltar and the Suez here, so Cairo, but capturing Cairo will capture the Suez. So if they do both of those, then that will align nationalist Spain to the Germans. And as far as the Comintern, if the Republicans win the Civil War, then when Russia goes to war with Germany, then the Spanish nationalists will automatically align with Russia. So you could change the color of these. Like I've got a slightly different color than the Russians. It could be that you're using the same color as the Russians. It doesn't matter. You would replace these with Russian units, and they would be Russian. You would get the 2 IPP for the territories here, and that would be it. And also, as far as what the result of that is, in the end, the Germans would get a victory condition if they win the Spanish Civil War. But the Russians don't. I was kind of surprised when I was reading through the victory conditions that the Russians don't actually get a victory condition for that. What they do is like they get points for every territory that they own that is worth something, like has a number value assigned to it. So like they could actually get 2 points if they still own this territory and this territory when the game ends. Then they will get those 2 points. But it could be that they win the Spanish Civil War and then they lose all those territories in there, and so they actually get no points in the end, at the end of the game, as far as victory condition points. Okay, so then what happens when you win the Civil War? Like immediately when you win the Civil War, let's say the Republicans win the Civil War, they take out all the yellow guys. So what happens with these guys and with these guys and with the boats? So you remove the defeated Spanish forces from outlying islands and colonies from the game. And then, of course, the victorious forces become the Spanish army. So the victorious player can now reconfigure them and place them as he wishes in any configuration in Spanish territories. No more than one unit may be placed in Spanish islands or colonies. Naval forces must be set up adjacent to a Spanish naval base. Naval forces of the losing side are subject to capture. Roll a d12. On a 1 to 6, they become property of the victor. On a 7 to 12, they're scuttled. So in the event that the Republicans were to win the Civil War and they've taken all of this out, then you would remove the others. Like if these guys were still here, you'd take them off. If this guy was here, then you take him off. And then you could, if you wanted to, take one unit, any kind of unit you want, but only one, and place him in there and another unit in there. I don't know that it would do you much good to put a unit over here. There's not really anything you could do there. And as far as putting one down here, you're not really at war with anybody down in Africa anyway, so you're probably better off just leaving your forces here. But you can reconfigure them, like you can place them where you want up there, it says. And then with the ships here, like the 2 ships, if you didn't already take these 2 ships out with your ships, then you could roll the dice. 1 to 6 means that you get those ships, so you would exchange them for the color of these ships, right? And the 7 to 12 means that they're sunk, so you just remove them from the board. And for all intents and purposes, that is the Spanish Civil War. I don't think there's anything more to say about that. I guess what I would say is that if you can get the expansion set, if you can, or at least play with those rules if you've got the units, because it's a little more interesting. Like this is more interesting for sure than just calling it a strict neutral like they do in Global 40, and nobody goes there, and if you do, then everybody else joins the other side. Like it is more interesting than that. But it's even more interesting if you get the expansion set, and that's why I plan on getting it. Like I've only played the game a couple of times here, and it's like you get kind of bored with it after a while because there's not much to do here, right? Like there's just one side fighting the other on one small little peninsula. And I got to do that. Like you even forget, you're taking your German tenor. Oh, geez, I forgot to do something with Spain, right? Like it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, really. Like it just if it was cut up into more spaces and there was more people on there, like more units, then maybe you'd get a little more excited about it. But I think that it'll be a lot better once I get that expansion set. And I would encourage you to do that if you have this game as well. So that's the Spanish Civil War out of box. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.